Good morning, everybody. It's 12:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in Brooklyn, New York. My name's Max Cohen. That's Colborn. Below me is Renee. In the corner over there is Naeem Al-Yad, and this is your MOCA Weekly Town Hall. We're happy to be here. We're happy to have you here. First of all, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Pretty good.
Hey, all right. Now that that's out of the way, let's just talk about what we were just kind of discussing, which is that NVIDIA, everyone knows, the largest GPU chip maker in the United States, now responsible for what, 16, 17, 18% of the entire United States GDP, valued at $5 trillion, announced their earnings this morning.
Yesterday at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Yesterday at 4. Thank you very much. That's what I meant. 62% increase year over year in revenue. They beat, even in Colborn's words, the loftiest expectations of their earnings. AI investment is not slowing down in the slightest. In fact, it's increasing at a rate that I think every single person in the economic world is going to find surprising. So maybe we can just start here. Colborn, what does this mean for the economy?
Well, the question is, why is this important for us, right? If we think we are downwind of a crypto cycle that never particularly materialized, what has been this kind of huge unwinding? It started on the back of more tariff talk, which, we got another taco trade where it seemed to be a big nothing burger. But fear of that combined with talks of an AI bubble emerging definitely spooked the market, and people accelerated to be risk off. We've seen massive hyper liquidations on a scale that we've never seen. I think it was 2 days ago that we were all looking at kind of the explosion of futures perp use on chain. And what does this mean kind of for the industry? Again, if crypto art is downwind of people getting really, really rich off of crypto.
That's an interesting topic, and something I think actually bears further discussion. I want to return to that in a short while. This idea that I kind of wrote about last week in the newsletter, and I'd love to get your opinions on that. Like, is crypto art still downstream of crypto wealth, as it was traditionally in the past? I mean, I don't know. Do we want to hold on?
I think it's interesting to talk about in comparison, of course, to the Klimt that sold for $250 million. And everybody's like, the art market is so back. So we have we have so many competing forces right now, and it's all to say that it feels like the space that we inhabit is really lost without an identity. Do we want to be in the contemporary art world? Do we want to be in the crypto world? Are we attached to the price of, Bitcoin, Ethereum? Is it kind of like on the back of people making a bunch of money like it was in 21 with DeFi summer, and NFTs were the hot thing? Or is it just all, is it a moment in time that needs to be like end capped, and now it's all just AI?
Well, it feels like this is like what we're on the cusp of figuring out, right? Like, I think we're going to get our answer in the next 6 months or so, right? Is crypto art now? Crypto art, obviously, it's like a huge term, and it's like, well, what does that mean for this wider market? But we are going to see if investment in crypto art is going to increase or decrease proportionally to crypto or to the art market at large, right? The kind of general consensus I've seen, this Gustav Klimt piece, is a portrait of a young woman. I'm not sure when it was made, but anyway, it sold for, I think, $205 million with a $236 million at after the premium that Sotheby's took out, or got on that piece. But it was the second highest, I think, single art sale in the history of like art auctions. So there is talk. The attitude, we'll see if it holds, is that like the art market at large, which has been experiencing, from my understanding, like a pretty serious downturn akin to what we've been experiencing in crypto art for at least the last year or so, maybe longer than that. Perhaps it is on the upswing. I don't know if I have necessarily have an opinion on whether a rise of investment in art is going to lead to a rise of investment in crypto art, but I think that is my inkling more than a rise in crypto wealth is going to lead to a rise in crypto art. I think that the two spheres have more or less fundamentally shifted. I wrote about this in my newsletter last week, talking about the House of Pranksy and the release of, the, I guess, aborted release of that project, which was meant to kind of, I think, bridge the gap. Pranksy wanted to kind of recreate alpha group chats, alpha discords by selling like gated access to a Discord server that would, I think, in his mind, kind of marry like the art world side and the kind of like exclusivity and like cultural relevance that artists have with this desire to get investment opportunities that I think like the alpha part of the NFT world, the collectible part of the NFT world has demonstrated. But I think that those two things are schismed more or less. I don't think they have much to do with each other. I'm not sure if like crypto prices go up and a bunch of people make money on Ethereum, Bitcoin, etc. If that trickles down into NFTs like Bored Apes, Pudgy Penguins, whatever the big Ethereum based PFPs are, if that would go down to crypto art, I'm not sure that there's much interest in that level of cultural influence or exclusivity. I think that all of the overtures that I've seen the last year or so from the people who are kind of most market making at the moment in crypto art, the Eli Scheinmans and the Redbeards and these deals with Art Basel and these shows at the Toledo Museum of Art, communicate to me that the people who control the movement at the moment, or the people who control the highest levels of the movement, their eye is on aligning crypto art more with the traditional art world, in the sense that they want this stuff to be considered digital art that sells at auctions, that is in museums, that is not kind of necessarily differentiated from its predecessors and physical works just because of its NFT based distribution mechanism. So I wonder if any increase in crypto, right? If we're going to say that the AI bubble, like let's say it's not a bubble, right, and that it's actually just increasing at a tremendous level, which is certainly to me what the NVIDIA massive earnings seem to communicate. If that is going to restore some kind of comfort and fearlessness to the market at large, if that will trickle into crypto prices, which I imagine it would, because people who invest in AI seem to also want to invest in like IBIT and the other Bitcoin ETFs. I don't know if that's going to, I don't see why that would necessarily fall down the rungs towards crypto art. I keep talking, but I feel like I've talked for a while. Please stop me.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to save it at this point. I was on with Justin Aversano yesterday, just trying to discuss sustainability, and I know we talked last time, about Brian and the Brinkworks model, and
I mean,
interesting times.
Has there ever been a sustainable model for like success in art? I asked that question, without irony. My knowledge of art history is good, if a tad elementary. It seems to me that like most of art world success is a matter of like A, luck, B, connections, and it's always kind of sequestered in a small group of people. So I'm not sure if there is a sustainable. I mean, the idea of crypto.
Well, I think the idea was that this time it could be different because the connections and the money were both distributed.
Mm-hmm. However, yes, at its core, but we've talked a million times about how like the original ethos and the original ethos of crypto art is dead, probably for the most part, if not altogether, because the powers of cultural influence seek exclusivity out of art, because that's where they're going to make that's their best chance for a payoff on a cultural investment, and from a financial investment is, sequestering value, influence, cultural superiority in a small sector of people. Yeah, it's a tricky question. But I guess my point is that like I do feel like in the next bunch of months we're going to get a pretty good inkling of this question. I mean, did crypto prices as they rose along the last year, did you guys see that have a kind of impact on crypto art? The tide of crypto art as opposed to like the upper echelons of value, that is. To my eye, it didn't really have a major impact. The people who are selling for lots of money, and the people who are curating the gallery shows, and the people who are maintaining this cultural influence for some time now seem to be doing okay regardless of the market, and everyone below it seems to have the same attitude of like malaise, growing disinterest, tedium, exhaustion.
I think you're right. I feel like partly what's behind this is sort of a firm recognition by sort of the usual suspects who could be but aren't buying much crypto art anymore, is the fact that you can probably more easily make your 10 times or 100 times increase on crypto collectibles as opposed to art, and that even some of the higher echelon art is highly illiquid a lot of the time, and sitting on a very expensive crypto art NFT that somebody might one day be willing to pay X dollars for may not amount to anything if you suddenly need the money in a rush.
Mm-hmm.
But that also sort of makes me think back to the idea that for the average crypto artist, like, I don't know, I feel like the thing that we need isn't another few dozen super wealthy crypto collectors. I think what would be like game changing and potentially life changing for a significant number of crypto artists is if there was some movement towards that idea of democratizing not just the creation but also the collection of art, which I don't know if we made any progress towards.
That's just
like
until display mechanism that is reasonable for the average person, right?
There's that, and then there's still the taint of crypto and newly the taint of AI, which also affects a lot of crypto artists. So I still think one day eventually we'll get to a point where crypto art as like a technical medium will become the most the most prevalent medium of collected art by like the masses. But as you say, for technical reasons and for cultural reasons and a variety of other reasons, like I don't even think it's within seeing distance at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if we'll get there in 10 years. We may well not.
I mean, it still makes sense, like from an investment side, right? It makes a lot more sense to purchase an X copy for $500,000 with the attitude that it's going to go up to $600,000 if your goal is to make $100,000. It makes a lot more sense to do that. It's a lot better of an investment than buying a bunch of crypto art for $10 and hoping that one of them is going to go up to $100,000, right? Essentially, like, you can make the same. There was no other opportunity at the beginning to make that same kind of money. I don't even think anyone has an eye on it. But at this point, there are quote unquote safer investments if you're looking to make a lot of money in art at the moment, with a fairly, I think, reasonable expectation that these prices aren't going to like dramatically drop for at least a couple of these like upper echelon artists. And so I agree with you, Daim, that like what you really need is a rising, like a tide of collectors who are looking for good art in general. But yeah, I think you're right. It's not in seeing distance because it requires like a fundamental shifts in how we're able to see this art, right? Like until it is normal to have a like a digital frame in your house, useful for art, right? People have digital frames for like family photos, but it's fairly rare, I think, to find a equivalent of a token frame. Then,
Well, or until we sort of culturally shift from suggesting that that's a necessary aspect, because let's be honest, like sure, there's dynamic and video based and like code based crypto art, but like seriously, the vast majority of crypto art is a damn still frame in PNG or JPEG or whatever. And frankly, if it's originally created at a high enough resolution, will 100% guaranteed look better, high quality printed onto like archival cotton paper than it ever will look on any sort of display.
yeah, but these are still like you're right 100%, and so this isn't a disagreement, but like that's still so many more steps from just buying the artwork, right? Like I think I was telling Colburn about this the other day. Like I still have my MOCA, the print from the fundraiser we did in 2023, which is up in the top right of our screen right now. Like it's still sitting in a tube. It's on incredible high quality paper printed by GT Sewell. And like there are ways that you can get these prints like incredible high quality delivered around the world, but that means you have to buy the art. It means you have to then find a printer, pay separately for a printer, get the piece delivered to you, and then get it framed and hang it. Right?
So sure, taking that approach, that's super unlikely. Now I will note my apartment, my tiny ass apartment, is filled with crypto art prints in frames and on canvas, and the majority of them I got directly from the artist, basically them having sort of calculated it into the purchase price.
But the question becomes, unfortunately, right? And I hate to be the one to say this because it's such a joke. Like, why at that point do I need to own the piece of art? Right? If it's the aesthetics that I want, it's the aesthetics that I love, why do I need to buy the NFT first? I think that still is.
But I mean, I don't think that has anything to do with the physicals, right? Because the digitals are perfectly accessible to you as well.
But in terms of the market itself, right? If I am like, again, just dipping my toe into crypto art, right? Just as a person who wants to purchase art or wants to have art around my house, my number one priority is having art around my house. And I see a piece of art that I like. It's a small smattering of people already, but even if that were to expand, it's not necessarily to purchase the underlying NFT because you can just hang on to you can literally just save the file. You can save the file usually in a pretty high quality. Now, I don't think anyone's doing this to begin with. I think that it's still too many steps, and I don't think people who have that kind of ideology are even exposed to this,
right?
Any idea that it's happening. My point is only that, like, if the goal for the layperson is to purchase a piece of art and have it hang on their wall, right, and have it just kind of be a part of their life as a decoration or a display or whatever, the same way that you would, the people feel when they go to like an art fair, right, and they're like, or a craft show, and they're looking for sculptures and paintings and such, like purchase of the underlying asset in this case wouldn't be necessary if you're going to go to a printer, if that printer is not going to have token gating services, which may not be in their financial interest to do so, if they're just going to lose sales every time they do so. Like these are still structural problems, right? And maybe
but this is contextualization, right? And this is contextualization that theoretically is super fundamental to NFTs and to crypto art, which I feel like theoretically we've moved past. Like, why purchase and own an NFT when you can right click and save, right? Like what you're describing is basically a variant of that just happens to involve physical assets.
but the only
But
the only thing
sorry,
I really, yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say the only thing that separates that, because I think that I am trying to separate two classes of people here. There are people who see the value of having the underlying asset, right? Those people are, in some respect, going to have an eye on the resale value of the asset, right? Or at least sorry, at least maintaining the value of the underlying asset. But if we are looking for, again, not a number of wealthy collectors or even a larger number of like mid-tier collectors, if we're looking for a swoop into this movement of people who are going to be exploring all sorts of low price or widely available editions, more experimental one-of-ones, whatever, those people probably are not having an eye on the future investment of their piece necessarily. They're probably looking towards the aesthetics. And I think ideally we do want a certain, that's maybe the collector class that we're missing, right? Or people who are just like, I love this piece of art, I want to live with this piece of art. Some people are always going to want to support artists in that circumstance. Some people are going to see it as unethical to just save the piece and print it because it's not, no value is going to the artist. That class of person definitely exists. But I think that there's an equal class that if we're not appealing to, we're kind of maybe crossing our fingers will come, that are just going to be aware of all this art and the ecosystem. And I'm not sure that those people are going to have the same kind of like ethical eye as more art world adjacent collectors.
But so I think that's where the idea comes in, that what we need is sort of a contextualization, or like a cultural shift, right? Where basically the purchase of the NFT of the crypto art is fundamentally recognized as like not in the in I guess in the positive sense, a virtue signaling of support for the artist. And I'm thinking of again, sort of easy gateway of a physical copy direct from the artist as being sort of something to sweeten the deal until we get to a point where we do have the display technology and those things are no longer necessary. But I think any sort of democratization of collecting art, the NFT portion fundamentally has to happen because the collector wants to support the artist and their future, creation of artworks. Right? If it's not happening because of that, then that's a different category of purchase, and probably a category of purchase that isn't likely to have sort of very universal impact on like crypto artists that are not at the top of their, I don't know, niche genre.
And this is an interesting point, I think, because one of the, I think, under discussed nuances of crypto art is that you can like meet these artists. Basically, you can hop into someone's DMs and like tell them you love their work, and they'll be happy in a lot of respects to talk to you about it, right? Like, people talk about, this personal connection with artists, but I think they talk about it almost as a buzzword and less as a like personal one-on-one connection, like discussion with artists that I don't think you really get outside of like, again, some like craft show environments. And so like I agree with you that a cultural shift needs to happen where that is sought after, because
and I think that's the sort of shift that like we need to be making ourselves, right? Like that's not going to come from outside, I don't think. If that happens, then that happens because crypto artists themselves are contextualizing their works in those terms,
Mm-hmm.
and are having a degree of, success in how they approach, potential collectors, or how they reach potential collectors.
It's interesting. It's, I don't know if it's possible to preempt a cultural shift, right? It has to be, many vectored and come from, it seemed to emerge all at once. Certainly, the more ethical thing to do if you want to buy a print of an artwork is to buy it from the artist instead of like going around their back essentially and buying it like in some roundabout mechanism by which you ignore the premium that the artist would be paid. But I don't know. I mean, like I never had too much experience with like DeviantArt, but back when DeviantArt and that kind of platform was big, like I would just find pictures that I liked and save them and use them as my wallpapers. And I mean, not physical wallpapers, but like my phone wallpapers. It's not like I ever cared too much about who the artist was or that I was.
I mean, DeviantArt was, I think, horrible for that. Like it basically incentivized artists to treat their work as like, free. I don't know, not even just free, but like free casual viewing content on the internet.
Yeah,
And like,
I mean, it's no different than Instagram.
yeah. Well, except DeviantArt, I think, had a lot of sort of design and like verbal attempts at contextualizing things in a way that would appeal to artists and that would try to make the meaningless little achievements of how many people were consuming your free content and downloading your free content feel meaningful and relevant and worth striving for.
Yeah, I mean, Max, just in contrast, do you have an opinion on what Substack did for writers, and how there might be a model around NFTs that could do the same for visual artists?
It's a great question. I can give an off the cuff opinion, but I don't want to be held to it. I haven't thought about this too much, but I mean, I think that the important context for Substack and the kind of rise of the newsletters is that the industry was collapsing everywhere, right? Like, and it's still collapsing, right? There was really no way, still is really no way to like guarantee an audience based on your personal voice if you're working through a publication. There are very few examples of like writers, even at I'd say the most successful level, like working, staff writers for the Atlantic, staff writers for the New Yorker, right? Where they are getting paid a premium salary to, write personality-driven articles, personality-driven essays. Within that sphere, it's pretty rare that like, there's probably 600 people who have those roles and everybody else is expendable. It doesn't really matter what platform you're talking about. Like a solid audience is hard to come by. And I think the subscription model is a response to the fact that like for short form writing or even like long form essays, there is no real alternative. So the Substack model grew out of, I think, desperation. Like there is still a thirst for that in some places of the market. And I think a lot of really smart and driven people preempted the the ongoing collapse of the print media industry by trying to just build an audience on their own because it was more reliable than hoping that, your freelance role writing for Vulture or, whatever New York Magazine or whatever, like place that you're writing for is going to keep you on in the same role, is going to keep you on, maybe ask you to be full-time. Like that's just not reliable. And it's way more reliable to build an audience on your own. Like, I'm not sure that the art world like the visual art industry at large is collapsing in the same way that the print media industry is. There's seems to still be like,
well, it doesn't have the same breadth, I guess, of opportunity and jobs. Maybe it does as far as like graphic design and marketing. But what it really speaks to, I think, and this is something that we always, I guess, we're trying to do, was how do you own your channel of distribution?
Mm-hmm.
And not have to go through some sort of intermediary to facilitate access to what could be called your followers.
but it's still a matter of like what you have to offer and what an audience wants from you, right? I think is the fundamental thing, right? Like people, and the audience that is looking, there's remains an audience who is looking for writing on specific topics, right? There are people who want political thought. There are people who want science news. There are people who want, roundup of art stuff. There are people who want short fiction. There's all sorts of audiences for writing of various kinds, and it doesn't take a ton of those people to create a fairly livable wage for a writer, right? If you're using Substack correctly. Now, I don't think that there's like millions or tens of thousands of writers on Substack who are like making a livable wage on that alone. But I think with crypto art, again, the problem is a matter of like, what do we have to offer and who is the audience, right? If the product, I know I'm using economic terms and it's art, so that's not necessarily applicable, but just go with me here for this analogy. Like if the product is digital art bought directly from the artist, does a large audience care about that, right? Maybe a large audience doesn't need to care about that. Maybe we need 1,000 people, 2,000 people, 3,000 people, and that's it, who are going to be consistently month over month, year over year, interested in exploring digital art, purchasing that digital art in a way that benefits the artist, and then having the relationship with the artist. I don't think that that's a huge ask, given that the potential audience is global, right? It does not rely on language. We have the distribution mechanisms that anybody in the world can find these pieces and purchase them and have those, relationships if they want, if, there's a shared language at least. But finding that audience, I think, is tricky because they are not going to look like one another in size, shape, origin, etc. Right? I don't think you can attract that audience through anything but organic means, because I think few people even know that they could be an audience to that. I think crypto art is still so hidden down, like the wide berth of crypto art is still so hidden beneath these layers of crypto and NFTs and art world, none of which are really great at marketing or interested in marketing. The fact that there is this thousands and thousands and thousands of piece of artwork, glut of artwork. So I don't know how to find that audience. It's not that I doubt they're there. It's just, I think it's a clearer sell on with writing and with Substack. Maybe it is responding to the same need, which is that there's very few people who can, through traditional market mechanisms, have a kind of career, a traditionally idealized career in these fields. But Substack also has the benefit of like, you can subscribe for $5 a month and then do what everybody does with streaming services, which is forget you were even subscribing to it, right? And that's a revenue stream. Like crypto art requires participation. It requires like consistent participation. You can't just like crypto art and pay $10 to a service and they're going to put art in your wallet, right? It's more
NFT boxes, baby.
More personal than that, right? Like we want it to be more personal than that, right? We want people to come to this art, identify with it, connect to it, and then want to buy it, and then want to support the artist. Not because
of course,
on their lap and they're like, oh, this is actually cool. We want them to like find the diamonds in the rough and find the needles in the haystack that they're going to really have a connection to. And so like the products again are fundamentally different, and I'm not sure that one-to-one it makes sense. Like I Colburn, I think you're referring in some respect to the Brinkworks, right? The Brian Brinkman structure of like kind of I hate to use this term, but like kind of a subscription service for art. But that is like unique to Brian Brinkman, right? He's got his unique style, he's got his unique audience, he's got his unique, long established relationships to collectors that he's worked for. It's not replicable at a large scale, because then instead of having 10 million pieces of artwork spread around Rarible, we'll just have 10,000 artist profiles that you can subscribe to, and we're left with the same problem, which is the what's it called, the infinity of choice, or the contradiction of choice, or the impossibility of making any decisions when you're faced with so many options. So
paradox of choice.
Paradox of choice. Thank you. I don't know if that was a good or satisfactory answer, but it
makes sense.
Yeah. I don't think there are satisfactory answers.
That's
I think the idealization that we had, is we're just so far gone, and we're looking. Yeah.
Well, okay. Fortunately, we have Brian Brinkman again in the audience to help us with some context. Brian said, "I think it's definitely a model that can be replicated at various scales." Panther Gita, the great Argentine painter, did it with 12 collectors successfully. I guess just like with a Substack, it is required that you are going to be finding, it's not just incumbent on the audience coming to you, it is incumbent on you finding your audience. That perhaps it is just kind of, there is more agency on the artist to like go find their subscriber base. Again, I hate to use all these economic terms, but just how I'm understanding this, so bear with me. But that's.
But I mean, this is kind of what we're reduced to, right? We're reduced to discerning the sustainability of an economic model in the absentia of like the dream of just individuals coming and supporting art that they like, right? Too random, too volatile, patron is greater than a subscriber.
I'm not sure that they're very different other than the terminology, honestly, Brian. Like,
I mean, but I get it from an artist standpoint, because you don't necessarily want to be like airdropping works to people. You also want somebody on the other side validating that work inside of themselves and coming to you and facilitating some sort of conversation and purchasing that work because it's meaningful to them and it's meaningful to you because you created it. There's a bit of a different relationship there.
Like the patron difference from the subscriber is one of engagement.
Fair. Okay.
Right. A subscriber is sort of a passive recipient. A patron is someone who's engaged.
But it's hard. It's hard to maintain that level of engagement, right? Because there's so much information and life is so disparate and things are changing so fast, and it's.
I mean, it's also like Panther with 12 collectors, right? It's a much larger encumbrance of responsibility on those 12 collectors. If you have 100, if you have 1,000, if you have 10,000, patron subscribers, whatever you want to call them, like the more you have, the more responsibility is diffused, the easier it is then to count on them for long-term sustainability, right? Like I, as a subscriber, say, if I am one of 10,000 people and I am, going $5 a month, $5 a year at something, right? Like that's a lot more sustainable across 5, 10, 15, 20 years than if I were one of 12 collectors and it is incumbent on me to put up $5, $6, $10, $7, $10,000. Like I have no idea what the scale of these things are, but yes, a model like this can work at a low level. I mean, you can have one collector, right, who buys a work from you every year, right? You can have like a true patron, where it's like, I am your exclusive buyer. You are going to tell me when you have new art, you're going to name your price, and I'm going to purchase it. But again, like the more people you can bring into your orbit, and this goes back to Colborn's idea forever about like what we're really searching for is ubiquity, not scarcity. Correct me if I butcher the ideology there, but the more people you can bring into your orbit, the more reliable they are as a conglomerate in providing you that kind of financial flexibility and turning this into a long-term career. So like, I don't know. I like Brian, if you're still listening, like I would be curious. Obviously, it's we can't do this, but I'd be curious to like return to this question in 3, 4, 5 years. Does what happens with Panther's career, right? Is she able to consistently get 12 collectors to sign on each year to patronize her works? Or is Brinkworks able to survive with 100 collectors 5 years from now? Like I just being real, like I don't know whether your cultural star is going to point up, whether it's going to point down. I don't know what this movement looks like, but I would be curious to know like whether any of this is sustainable. Maybe we can't find anything that is going to be more sustainable for more than a year, 2 years, 3 years. Maybe that's like the furthest down the pipeline that we can look, because the ecosystem changes so fundamentally in that time.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this in retrospect. Would I have rather supported 10, 15, 20 creators than just randomly buying the things that spoke to me? Well, not randomly, but more happenstance, just coming across and buying work. I think it's over 250 artists.
Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Well, and let's be frank. Through the museum, it's a lot more than 250 artists.
That's true. Through the museum, it is a lot more. Yeah, hundreds and hundreds of artists who inevitably, I just cannot keep track of what everybody is up to and the latest. So almost, automatically your attention span has to get reduced, or whatever your algorithm is feeding you, it has to get reduced. So
we have Silvio Vieira. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Saying I agree with most of the things said here. Support doesn't need to only be buying, however.
The great psychedelic artist.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Silvia.
Yeah, which is fair, but if like the support you receive does eventually need to include enough buying to keep you going. So like I think unless you're in a great place where everything already feels secure, like certainly support other than buying is important and relevant and appreciated. Again, unless you're super secure, you're probably also trying to figure out how to turn even that sort of support into hopefully somebody else buying sooner or later.
I mean, it does all come down to that eventually, right? Like,
yeah,
whether you are helping someone with retweets, whether you are in their mentions giving them advice, don't do that. But you know what I mean, like forming a connection with an artist to like give them feedback, I suppose, like helping them get curated into a show, making connections. Like the funnel always runs down to, can I get paid for the work that I'm doing? Right?
Unless you're doing the whole art thing as a part-time basis and you're happy-go-lucky all the way,
or unless you're really avant-garde, right? Unless you're really avant-garde and you really don't give a shit and you're like market antagonistic, and like that's totally fine.
Well, yeah,
There's much of that in crypto art, to be fair. Like, and I think if there were, we probably wouldn't know who they are because they're market antagonistic anyway.
We know a few.
Brian says, I think the idea of subscription/patronage plays into what collectors prefer, which is supporting and collecting without the time commitment of having to be aware of drops/auctions, etc.
Yeah, that definitely got exhausting. Like having to keep track of when everybody was dropping mechanics, where. That was really tiresome.
Mm-hmm. True.
Renee speaks.
And just the FOMO aspect of it all. It didn't like lend itself very well to caring about the art. It's just everybody rushed to art blocks to buy whatever art blocks was being released
Yep.
that day.
Yeah.
I mean, but we know about like the power that high value can have over your perception of an artwork, right? Like an artwork you don't like that's valued at $100, I promise, for almost all of us, unless we're a lot holier than I am, is going to look a lot cleaner. It's going to be a lot more beautiful. It's going to speak to us a lot louder if it's valued at $100,000. If he's sitting in your wallet right now that you bought on a whim in 2019 and never looked at, if that's
Although I will say,
yes,
I've seen a lot of very highly valued art that still didn't leave me thinking it was anything amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So Sylvia, with your point that a lot of OG artists are feeling left aside, like I'm not an artist. Colborne, makes art.
Yeah, you're right, Sylvia.
I think that this is fairly ubiquitous amongst everybody, honestly, whether OGs or not, that is not within this maybe like 30 artist tier of consistent selling, consistent curation, consistent buzz. I think everyone is pretty much feeling the vast majority of this movement is it's for years. This isn't like a new thing that started this week because NVIDIA beat earnings. This is like years and years of fundamental disenfranchisement by.
And we should say during this call that the NVIDIA bump has completely retraced.
What do you mean?
Woohoo!
Maybe it was up 6% and now it's completely retraced back to where it was. So something obviously much larger is going on. People can't figure it out. Everything is unwinding.
My dad used to say this thing. He said the thing that, or maybe it was my dad or my grandfather used to say, like, there's two things that happen when a company beats earnings. Either company beats earnings and the stock price rises because they've, their promise of future wealth is so much higher, or their stock immediately falls because there's no expectation that they're going to be able to beat earnings again. And you can't know until it happens, which is going to happen. So either the stock's going to go way up or the stock's going to go way down with equal likelihood.
But the whole OG crypto artist, I don't know, disenfranchisement thing, like I think it's probably further made worse by the fact that we're still stuck on X/Twitter as most of our primary I don't know, distribution and communication channels, and basically a lot of us are probably like throttled, if not downright shadow banned, because of whatever we're writing about when Elon Musk isn't in the mood. Even if we're not, the moment you start posting a little bit less, you probably disproportionately fall in terms of how much boosting you get from the algorithm, and so it can very easily turn into like a self-perpetuating cycle where one day you feel like you're just not getting the kind of support from the community that you ought to be, and for a week or two you post a little bit less and you virtually disappear from everybody's radar, and then you now really are not getting much of any support from the community, and probably won't even have any chance of doing so until you start back posting more often, and couple of weeks or a month or two pass like that, and the algorithm decides that you're worth putting on people's timelines again.
Vicious cycle.
Yeah, I mean, it's vicious cycles. I think the underlying, like what we've kind of the underlying theme of everything we've spoken about is like individual powerlessness, right? Like much larger forces are controlling the things that like lead to our individual, liberation, whether creative or financial, right? Whether it's like these larger kind of algorithmic processes in like the crypto prices, whether it's, investment in data centers at the highest level, whether it's this, the arrival in crypto art of a new kind of class of collector that is, more prolific in numbers and more interested in like supporting low level artists, whether it's, the algorithm of Twitter, smiling once more on anything NFT related, as Sylvia was saying. Like, none of these things are in our conscious control. And so I think we are experiencing what people feel like when they are being born out on like the tides of fate, which is like despair. It's hard to not be in control of your own destiny. And I think for all these reasons we've spoken about, being, people always talk about crypto art as being downstream of this, downstream of that, downstream of economics, downstream of crypto, downstream of culture, downstream of digital art, whatever. Like, it's hard being downstream of everything because that means you're never at the source, right? You are always at the mercy of these source areas. And like,
but economically, it's not at the source. We live in pyramid capitalism.
In what sense?
In the sense that everything is everybody is getting remunerated for their production and their output, and then they have to go and use that remuneration to consume goods and services.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of the essential goods and services being food and home, and there's other like art is last on the list, so it is inherently all the way downstream. You can't eat your art. You can't.
It's a complete luxury. It is.
Yeah.
It's perhaps the. I always bristle at the idea of art as being somehow more noble than any other pursuit. I hated it when I was in fucking film school, and you had these film students who thought they were going to save the world with their, avant-garde bullshit. And like, art is really great at one thing, which is making people feel less alone. And paying for that product, the product of feeling connected to another person, connected to universalisms, connected to others, that the premium of feeling seen is just not at the baseline of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Maybe emotionally, but on a day-to-day basis, it just isn't. And so like
which
is essentially.
Sorry, go ahead.
What was that? I was just gonna say all of this is a luxury good, right? Like, art is a luxury good when it comes to purchasing it. When things go poorly economically, movies don't do well. People stop buying books. There's less interest, obviously, in buying, scarce art to put on your walls. But again, so it forces this whole ecosystem and everybody who loves it to be downstream of way stronger forces that even our collected abilities can do anything about. And so like, I don't know, it doesn't ever surprise me that like one of the hallmarks of crypto art and crypto and NFTs, especially crypto art over the last 3 years, has been this like kind of just languid despair, right? Because what the fuck can we do, right? With people feel this way about all sorts of things, right? It's not just like crypto art, but I think we feel it fairly intensely.
I think you're perfectly right, and I think it might partly be the fact that came the pandemic, and like everything was going to shit, and everyone was suffering, and like crypto and crypto art was living its heyday.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this feeling, there's this feeling that I guess our attachment to crypto makes us somehow detached from the grand economics of the world at large. But I mean, clearly not anymore. And if you look at it from that perspective, you're 100% correct. Like, do we even need much analysis to figure out why our purely luxury goods are not selling when the world economy is going to shit and has been for the last I don't know, 4 or 5 years now.
But don't worry, Elon came out and said everybody's going to be fabulously wealthy.
Oh, that's good. I don't.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be. Maybe it's too late to say like I don't want to be negative, but like one of the things that I'm aware of with politics in general is that politics at large does not reflect the fact that economic trends take 4 years to play out. Right? We're now 4 years thereafter feeling the effects of what the pandemic did to supply chains, what it did to economics, what it did to inflation. Right? People don't vote in democratic elections based on like the long-term horizon of how economic situations are going to happen in the future, right? They vote based on like present moment. So you look at like this moment in the early 2021, right, when the stimmy checks came out, right, in the U.S., right, $1,200 to most working people. That was just thrown right back into the casino, and it kind of started this NFT boom. Or a lot of people say that that's what was responsible in a lot of ways for the NFT boom. One thing I think that often goes under discussed is that like unemployment benefits in the United States were being juiced up. So people didn't just have an extra $1,200 on hand; they had an extra $1,200 on hand. Like I lost my job in the restaurants in March of 2021, and then unemployment checks were juiced so much that I was making more from the unemployment checks by like a fairly decent margin than I was, working my 36 to 40 hours a week at the restaurant. Which
Yeah,
was,
same with my ex-wife.
and
That's
so you got
classic, yeah.
$1,200 already on top of doing well, right? The effects of that, the effects of all of that is what's happening now, right? Like, point being, everything that we're experiencing is a reaction to what we had in 2021, right? This is the come down from the high, the fucking cocaine bump where you're like, I'll never stop feeling this way. This is awesome. And then, you're face down with your head in a toilet, or so I've heard happens, with all your serotonin just like drained out of you. So, none of this is like super surprising necessarily, right? Like, this is probably not the baseline for crypto art going forward, and probably 2021 was not the baseline for crypto art going forward. If both of these is like a long-term expectation, I don't feel like are necessarily they don't feel like they're sticky, right? This is probably as bad as it gets for crypto art, honestly.
Well, it can't get much worse. The problem is who can survive the volatility, right? Which of these greats? I don't want. I want to use this term in as nice a way as possible, but like bedroom artists is going to be able to maintain both.
Mm.
And it's sad because this was, in my opinion, where some of the best art was coming from.
Bedrooms.
Yeah, just just like people. I just think that's where a lot of the best art comes from. It's just people. I'll just leave it at that.
And people were in a position to want that art, right? They had their basic needs covered, right? They had the money they needed because unemployment benefits were okay. Like, the inflation that was to come wouldn't hit yet. The economic uncertainty that was to come didn't hit yet, and so they were okay.
They weren't allowed to leave the house and spend cash.
And they needed that, what art provided, more than they do now, right? It became a matter of existential survival, to feel connected to other people, which is what art was there for, right? And it's what NFTs were there for, right?
So are you saying only bioterrorism can save us?
Oh, that presupposes that the lab theory of COVID was borne out. I'm still not.
No, I'm not talking about last time. I'm talking about the next time.
No, but I think that when the world is hard, I think that art lowers on the
people do turn to art more.
Period of needs, right? Like, obviously, it will never be more important than food, shelter, water, etc.
Yeah.
But
if you got those and the world is still hard, then you're gonna want some art.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that like art proliferates after war, right? There's a reason that like the greatest period for literature, I think, in a lot of people's eyes, was either, directly after World War One, this lost generation that still, the Hemingways and the Fitzgeralds and the Virginia Woolfs still have such a hold over, the contemporary understanding of like literary importance, or this like postmodern period directly after 1945. You know, like all these great art movements, surrealism, cubism, fucking abstract expressionism, they're all like came about in this period of like, oh shit, the world can literally fall all together into war from like 1920 to like 1960. And we still fetishize all of these things.
Do you think crypto art is a great art movement?
No. I think that like, well, I think we can't know now. But I think crypto art I think crypto art contains a lot of unbelievable art, but I think its value is in the distribution. We've said all this before, and I'm not the first person to say this, but like the value is in its distribution mechanism, not in what it had to say necessarily, because it didn't say anything specifically, right? Crypto art was it was the internet. It was a bunch of voices speaking together all at once about all sorts of different things. That's how you have photographers and AI artists and painters and 3D artists and AI artists, like all kind of within the same overhang. I don't know what makes a great art movement great. I mean, maybe it is like challenging hegemonies. I don't know. I don't know. I've never judged an art movement as great before. I've only been told that they were great. And crypto art is the first time that I got to make that determination for myself. And I'm not sure if I were, you know, sitting next to Andre Breton and Leonora Carrington in a fucking cafe in Paris in 1936 that I would have said surrealism was going to be a great art movement too. But history judges these things by whether they sell and whether they're canonized, and that's all that people really give a shit about when it comes to like greatness. So we can't know
So sad.
those things are going to happen, but yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know, is anthropophagia a great art movement? I'd never even heard of it until I saw a Tarsila do Amaral exhibition at like MoMA some years ago. Go look up Tarsila do Amaral. She's fucking awesome. But like, I don't think most people are aware of that. Would most people say that?
Is it? It's not what it sounds like.
It's like, I believe it was a Brazilian art movement, maybe Argentine as well, but it was based mostly on like really over exaggerated depictions of the human body.
Okay.
As far as
from the name, I'm
definitely not an expert on anthropophagia, but you know, constructivism, was that a great art movement? Like, I don't know. It's not one of the big ones that they teach you in fucking art history 101. So,
well, maybe we can run off of this just real quick, because you know the manifesto Anthropophagia, the Cannibal Manifesto, argued that Brazil's history of cannibalizing other cultures was its greatest strength. So maybe that is crypto art's greatest strength, is that suddenly there is a bringing together of the globe into an art movement through the internet into a market, and that this will produce the highest reflective culture.
I mean, that's been the most interesting thing about crypto art always for me, is that like
totally
it destroyed these dividing lines between all these things. Oh, you work with this medium. Oh, you work with this mood. Oh, you have this level of technical expertise. Oh, you have this education. It doesn't matter. Here we are in the fucking cauldron together.
Yeah.
And I always like, it was always the juxtaposition between, I mean, just look at the three artists who are having a conversation in our chat. Untitled XYZ is a metaverse, architect. Silvio Vieira is like a surrealist. And then Brian Brinkman is like, I don't even know what you would call that. It's like kind of like, it's like contemporary pop art in a way. Like these art styles, these people have nothing to do with each other at all in terms of their aesthetic.
But crypto art unites them.
Crypto art gives it is this bubbling cauldron where all of these people come together, and that is worthy of something. So maybe it is great, Colborn, but we can't say in the moment, and we have to judge on certain attributes. But it's 1:05. We've been here for an hour and 5 minutes. I told you guys we could talk about this all day if we were given a chance. Any last words before we get out of here?
No, that was good.
That was fun.
Oh, look, I pulled out the executive decision maker. Should we spin it?
Yeah, you're gonna have to read it to us because we can't see with the glare.
I know. All right, we got no. So maybe the question was crypto at a great movement?
We could have paid McKinsey $17 million to bring in a team of 8 consultants, and they would perform the same role.
Does anybody else have a question for the executive decision maker?
I don't have a question, but I would like to thank Siobhan Shrawat, Brian Brinkman, Silvio Vieira, and our own Untitled XYZ for being around with us in this. It was really cool to have you guys
Here.
Yeah, just going back and forth with us. This is what we always hope for and that we don't always get. So we appreciate it.
Question for the executive decision maker: is crypto art a great social movement?
Thumbs down.
What the?
Damn.
Another 20 million to McKinsey.
It's a hater. Are you a reliable executive decision maker? No.
Well,
All right, that's bullish.
it's like AI.
We're so back. We are so back.
So we have to go figure out how we're going to go make $37 million to pay those McKinsey consultants we brought in. So we are going to go. Thank you everyone for being here. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Oh, no, we won't. It's Thanksgiving.
We're gonna give thanks.
Yeah, we're going to give thanks. We won't be here next week, but we'll be here in 2 weeks, and we'll be excited to see you then.